explosive part. How do you physically power something that's going to work with this? Well, number one is you make everything as low power as possible, but you still at the end of the day have to power it. So instead of to actually power this, I went to see what's the most dense battery that I could physically get. This is a 11.7 volt, 21 milliamp hour lithium-ion polymer cell. Basically, this thing can put out, what was the final value? 1200 watts of electricity. Whoa. If you need to use this, as in it's designed for that overstretches. The power component sides don't actually use 1200 watts, but that's a serious amount. Serious. Basically, this little battery is designed for RC planes and helicopters and other things like that, where they need absolute maximum power and minimum space and weight. But the problem is they remove things like plastic shields. So you can actually squeeze that and it will spontaneously combust. I don't recommend that. It's a lithium fire. It has everything it needs. You will not be able to put it out with any fire extinguisher ever. Official safety guidelines is just let it burn out. I accidentally nicked one of these while I was working on it, and it left a nice scorch mark on my ground outside my house. But it's all relatively safe and it's actually in there. So, relatively. The physical power supply in the actual computer is only capable of 135 watts. The battery is capable of much more. The actual entire computer itself uses actually only around 12 watts. So it's a very low power system at the end of the day for absolutely everything in there. And I get around 2-3 hours of battery life. I've never actually checked entirely from battery life to see what it's like. So next slide. This is heat. These are swapped around? Oh well. Yeah, heat is a big deal inside this thing. All electricity, that's 12 watts of electricity consuming, that's basically meaning 12 watts of heat. So the only way to combat this is to remove it, and I have to slowly conduct everything out through the entire book with paper because I don't want to ruin it with a fan and fan holes in the back of the book. You know, it doesn't look proper. It looks everything perfect in that. I don't want to ruin it with fan holes. So the only way to stop it is to just not generate any power. And as part of this testing, I actually borrowed a thermal camera to image the insides of the book. This is, for instance, is the motherboard at 90 minutes of stress testing maximum CPU and GPU load, just to see how hot it can physically get. The maximum temperature the entire thing actually reached inside was 48 degrees Celsius, which for you crazy people is 118 Fahrenheit. So that's not that hot, given, you know, computers normally work a lot hotter than that. Average GPUs on modern graphics cards normally work at around 90 degrees, for instance, so that is actually incredibly cold. Next slide. The speakers. There were speakers in it. They broke. Dodgy Chinese wiring was to blame with that. Basically, they were great. They did sound perfect. I have some test videos of them actually working. Basically, the plan that I originally put in, and I'd love to have demonstrated if it worked, is that the speakers were designed with a modified cone in them that was spaced from the styrene backing inside it. So they acted like normal speakers, but if they hit a certain tone, they would resonate if the volume was high enough. And that resonation would actually create a vibration in the actual panel. And that resonation frequency was set at the linking panel sound if you were missed. So if you had played the game and you linked somewhere, you would have heard the linking sound and actually physically felt the book vibrate against your finger. And unfortunately, the wiring blew it. And there's no easy way for me to replace that without spending an awful lot of money buying a whole new motherboard for it. So it's unfortunate, and I have videos of it working. Chinese wiring. Next slide. Trying to assemble all of this together is kind of like a puzzle in itself, or like Jenga, because this is essentially like a 9-layer computer system inside there. It's a 3-dimensional puzzle because of all the RF and EMF shielding that has to happen. It makes everything so incredibly close. The way I shielded that is with aluminum with paper either side, and each one has been individually tagged and grounded. And to give you an example of just how dense it is, if I point to the part kind of where the USB cables, you can see just 2 layers of it in the book, what it looks like on the inside, with just the motherboard removed to the lower layer. That is nowhere near all of it removed. If I go through, at one point in the book, there is plastic spacing glass for the touch screen, a conductive layer, Then there is the actual LCD. There's a insulating barrier for that, spacer, insulating barrier, the LCD controller, spacer, insulating barrier, spacer, power lines, spacer, insulating barrier, spacer, motherboard. It was a nightmare to try and assemble this all, and I really don't like taking it apart and putting it back together. But it's good because it's assembled now. I never have to go into there again. Let's see if I can actually get some more programs working on this. I'll show that later. I don't want to take too much time on here. So next slide. If you want to try. This is where I previously ended the talk last time. But to give an example now, we did that talk and then I released the book online and it got a little bit of publicity online, a bit more than everyone expected. So I have just some statistics for you. It was released, I published it online in late 2012 and that was before Abduction, that was before Rium Myst Masterpiece Edition. So Cyan hadn't done a big Myst presence on things for a while and things, you know, kind of, it's been a long time since Myst things have happened and this is a 18, 19-year-old game here we're talking about. How popular actually is this with the general population? It's hard to say all these numbers for certain, but just to give you an example, my website where I listed this has had over 6 million viewers on it. I've had over 3 terabytes of bandwidth transferred back and forth from this. Originally, my goal was just to get it to the #1 page on Reddit for a little bit. That was my goal. I sort of Reddit, please give me the karma. Turns out it hit the Reddit page, front page, for around 48 hours straight and was their #1 position article for 3.5 hours.
Ah!
It's dropped now, but it's actually, at the time, it was the number 15 post in our gaming subreddit of all time. People liked it. I have a YouTube video of it working, and the YouTube video is only it's only like 100 something seconds long, so like 2 minutes. That's had over 300 days of combined viewing just because of that little 1-minute video put up from it, and news articles on it that happened. That's the real benchmark that I've been using on how popular this is, and how much the general population at large likes Myst. You know, everyone here likes Myst, but what about all those other people? You know, how many of them are crazy and don't like Myst, or whatever else? How many closet fans are actually out there in the world? I've tracked over 140 news articles on this book as it went, and I had to take an entire week off work to handle PR. So just to give you a list of the companies that featured this, just so that you know just how far this actually went, and that means just how far the spread of Myst still is, 18, 19 years after it was made, and without any recent Myst developments that have happened lately. It was featured on CNET, Escapist. There was 3 different articles on Kotaku, 4 articles on Gizmodo, Engadget, ThinkGeek, Good Old Games. Polygon had 2 articles, Boing Boing, Metafilter, Hackaday. Wired Magazine did 2 articles, PC Gamer. G4TV did 2 articles, Gizmag, Hard OCP, Geek.com, Penny Arcade, Destructoid, UberGizmo, Vsauce. There was a 2-page spread in Make Magazine. One of my personal favorites was Fine Books Magazine actually picked up a copy because they considered this to be an example of their working in books. It was listed in the American Conservative, and it actually started hitting some political things about the greatness of American video games that had been made in the past. Sky News Australia did a feature on it, and my personal #1 favourite, the Smithsonian Institute magazine, actually featured this. I did not ask this, I was not knowing about this, it just appeared. Wormhole books and things, but I'll give them leeway. It was the Smithsonian Institute. Seriously, they did this. And at the end of the day, I didn't get the exact figures, but just because of this buzz that this created, it actually did create a bump in Cyan's sales on Steam for the old Myst games. And funnily enough, just how far it went as well is that when Cyan released Rium Myst Masterpiece Edition and high-definition remake of this that they were making, they actually scanned this book to use as a texture reference because they considered it better quality than their original one. So at the end of the day, this kind of makes this actually the Myst book, or one of the Myst books, not just a fan creation, which is kind of the biggest compliment that you can get.